Imagine ducking into New York's Copacabana on a humid July night in 1950. The orchestra is vamping, cigarette smoke curls beneath the chandeliers, and every table overflows with off-duty G-men, gossip columnists, and Broadway hopefuls nervously tugging their lapels. Washington has just declared that sexual deviants are a national security risk, and agents are literally following men into bathrooms looking for evidence of affection. Suddenly, the house lights drop. Two silhouettes cross center stage and, without any warning, one plants a perfectly timed kiss on the other's lips. Dean Martin's suave profile lingers an extra heartbeat against Jerry Lewis's startled grin. The crowd gasps, and then the room detonates in delirious laughter. Nobody quite knows whether to clap, whistle, or check the exits, because an act of comedy has just collided head-on with America's newest panic. Tonight, we rewind that collision, strip away the punchlines, and search for the intentions behind the most dangerous kiss in showbiz history. To grasp why a simple smack carried social TNT, remember the numbers. In April 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower signed Executive Order 10,450, authorizing background checks for sexual perversion. Over the next decade, the State Department, Pentagon, and NASA dismissed or hounded at least 7,000 employees, and some historians argue the toll topped 10,000. Security hearings dragged on for months. Defendants were asked whether they had ever used women's perfume or lingered too long in gym showers. Harvard-trained astronomer Frank Kameny, for instance, was fired in 1957 for one arrest that never even led to charges. He spent the rest of his life suing the government that canned him. Newspaper editors fanned the flames with headlines like "Perverts Invade Capitol" and "Twilight Men Threaten Security," while pulp magazines sold lurid exposés claiming Soviet spies masqueraded as chorus boys. Schools followed suit, firing teachers on rumor alone. Bars posted "No wobblies, drunks, or homos" signs. Even Hollywood, supposed land of sin and champagne, tightened the leash. The Hays Code already forbade sex perversion on screen, meaning any open reference to homosexuality. Censors happily sliced 2-second shots of men's hands touching if the camera lingered. Yet, the public still craved escapism, and comedy proved a loophole. If a homoerotic gesture guaranteed a laugh, it slid past the blue pencils. That tiny exception is where Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis pitched their tent, gleefully poking the very bear Congress kept awake at night. And so, our story rockets south to a seedy Atlantic City showroom where two strangers struck bargain with destiny. It was sweltering July 24, 1946. Dean Martin, a 27-year-old Ohio barber's son who spoke English with an Italian lilt until age 5, had been crooning ballads in cheap joints for a decade without landing the breakout gig. Across the boardwalk, 19-year-old Jerry Lewis, born Joseph Levitch, the hyperactive child of Borscht Belt entertainers, was performing his record act, miming along to phonograph hits while juggling props. Both were bombing. Club owner Skinny D'Amato, desperate to stop audience walkouts, threw them together on stage as a last-ditch stunt. Dean opened with his velvet baritone version of "That's Amore." Halfway through, Jerry stormed on dressed as a bellboy, flailing and lip-syncing the words a beat late. Martin, staying in character, tried to shove him away. Lewis countered by climbing him like a lamppost. The house erupted. Within 48 hours, the duo signed a 5-year contract, doubling D'Amato's nightly revenue. What clicked? Part science, part lightning. Martin moved like still water, tall, bronzed, a grin hinting mischief but never breaking sweat. Lewis was dynamite with a cut fuse, somersaulting, screeching, his limbs describing a cartoon logic all their own. Together they produced a rhythm that felt dangerous yet safe, a two-man riot choreographed to a ballad. Audiences sensed genuine affection under the slapstick. The way Jerry clutched Dean's sleeve after pratfalls read less like shtick and more like trust. By 1948, they toured 70 weeks a year, slept in single hotel rooms to save cash, and slapped each other awake for dawn radio promos. In private diaries, Jerry called Dean "my anchor," and Dean referred to Jerry as "the kid," a nickname equal parts tease and tenderness. Television's birth arrived right on cue. NBC's Colgate Comedy Hour needed live wire talent, and Martin and Lewis delivered so much energy cameras sometimes shook on their mounts. One 1951 broadcast opened with the pair locked in a mock embrace so believable that network censors phoned the control booth mid-show. The switchboard flooded with viewers demanding rebroadcasts, and Paramount Pictures took notice. Hollywood handed the duo a 16-picture deal, but the Hayes office loomed. Writers quickly learned to deliver innuendo by triple-layer joke. In the movie At War with the Army, 1950, Jerry dons a WAC uniform to sneak out of barracks. A drill sergeant quips, "That's the prettiest soldier I ever did see," while Dean's character winks straight into the lens. Box office receipts proved the public loved seeing rigid military masculinity flipped like a pancake. Then came Sailor Beware, 1952. Jerry's character, Melvin Jones, suffers an allergy that causes him to faint whenever a woman kisses him, a premise practically begging for homoerotic punchlines. Mid-film, he begs Dean for practice pecs so he won't collapse on shore leave. Critics labeled the bit sublimely silly. Senators muttered it was sick. The controversy only pumped ticket sales. Perhaps the boldest gag landed in You're Never Too Young, 1955. To dodge jewel thieves, Jerry disguises himself as an 11-year-old boy squeezing into short pants and a sailor blouse. Dean's character, a schoolteacher, spends 3 reels fiercely protecting the child from flirtatious classmates. When an irate father threatens a spanking, Jerry leaps into Dean's arms, sobbing, "Don't let him hurt me, Daddy!" The audience roared, yet somewhere in the shadows, G-men sharpened pencils. Throughout these films, straight couples were still shown sleeping in twin beds inches apart, but Martin and Lewis shared bathtubs, bunks, and quick kisses with abandon. Every scene obeyed the letter of the code, no explicit sex, no admission of desire, while mocking its spirit. The public started asking dangerous questions. Could the macho crooner and rubber-limbed clown be more than partners? And if they were, did that make them any less funny? By 1953, no nightclub tale sold papers faster than a salacious Martin and Lewis rumor. Confidential magazine teased, "The odd couple America loves to watch," slyly inserting ellipses where facts should be. Columnist Luella Parsons printed a blind item about 2 megastars who engage in pillow talk rehearsals. The duo's publicity team fought back, staging photo ops with chorus girls draped on Dean's lap and Jerry mugging from behind. Yet the myth machine kept grinding. FBI File 100-3-116A, declassified in the 1990s, reveals an anonymous tipster claiming the comedians attended after-hours lavender parties in Hollywood Hills. Agents tailed them for 3 weeks, found nothing, and closed the investigation. Still, the file existed. Tension seeped off stage. Lewis, ever insecure, hustled to punch up scripts so his antics stayed center frame. Martin, craving respect as a serious singer, felt reduced to straight man furniture. Jerry's memoir recalls a fight over billing size on a Chicago marquee. When he suggested equal letters, Dean drawled, "Sure, kid, if they can find a font that spells ego." Meanwhile, Paramount bosses whispered that the duo's double bed bits were drawing the wrong kind of mail. Something had to give, and it cracked at their 10th anniversary show. July 24th, 1956. The Copacabana booked Martin and Lewis for a commemorative midnight set packed with A-list celebrities. Tabloids promised an onstage kiss bigger than the first. Backstage, however, Dean paced alone, sipping scotch. Jerry revised cue cards until ink bled. Moments before curtain, Dean barked, "Let's get through this circus and go home." The performance burned, gags landed, songs soared, but the chemistry felt mechanical. 2 polished pros fulfilling a contract. At curtain call, Jerry lunged for a hug. Dean extended a handshake instead. Newspapers called it comic timing, but inner circle witnesses swear the chill was glacial. Within 24 hours, lawyers dissolved their partnership. Dean signed solo film and record deals. Jerry locked himself in Paramount cutting rooms, directing The Delicate Delinquent to prove he could helm a project alone. Fan clubs wept. Nightclub owners posted "closed for mourning" signs. The most profitable comedy act in show business had vaporized, and neither man seemed willing to explain why. 2 decades of stony silence followed, until a live telecast forced confrontation in front of millions. Labor Day weekend, 1976. Jerry Lewis was 14 hours into his annual muscular dystrophy telethon, cheeks sagging from exhaustion. Frank Sinatra swept onto the Vegas stage, cracked a dad joke, then beckoned beyond the curtain. "I found someone in the hallway." Dean Martin ambled out, sporting a tux and the half-lidded grin audiences hadn't seen beside Lewis in 20 years. Jerry froze, jaw trembling. Dean opened his arms. Jerry collapsed into the embrace, whispering something the boom mics barely caught. "You look wonderful, brother." Viewers at home sobbed. Donations spiked by $1 million in 90 seconds. Cameras captured a moment that rewrote Hollywood folklore. Two alpha males, once rumored lovers, now middle-aged grandfathers publicly forgiving each other. After the broadcast, they shared a quiet drink, promised to meet soon, and mostly didn't. Old hurts calcify. Yet that single hug re-inked their legacy as something bigger than slapstick. Still, legacy is a living thing, and new chapters kept surfacing. In 2005, Lewis published Dean and Me, a love story. On page 1, he writes, "I loved him the way a man loves a brother, a partner, maybe even himself." Critics hailed it as the most heartfelt showbiz memoir since Chaplin's. But 3 years later, on stage at a Vegas benefit, Lewis blurted a homophobic slur while riffing. Apology tours followed, sparking debate. Can an accidental ally still harbor prejudice? Cultural historians pointed to generational blind spots, while younger fans judged by modern standards. Meanwhile, Dean's image, forever the whiskey-cool ladies' man, took its own bruises. Biographers revealed struggles with depression following his son Dean Paul's 1987 jet crash and nights when he played grainy Colgate kinescopes alone in his Beverly Hills den, nursing regrets. Friends claim he whispered Jerry's nickname, Kid, at the screen. The tough guys were fragile after all. In 2024, film scholars celebrated the Library of Congress opening reels of Lewis's once-suppressed Holocaust drama, The Day the Clown Cried. Viewers found a man wrestling with empathy for outcasts, perhaps atoning for jokes that once stung. Footage triggered think pieces about how comedy and trauma intertwine, and whether the clown on screen was asking forgiveness from the friend he lost. Flip on Netflix tonight, and you'll spot Martin and Lewis fingerprints everywhere. Lethal Weapons rigs and Murtaugh echo the crooner clown seesaw. Animated Smash Toy Story pairs laid back Woody with frenetic buzz in a blueprint lifted straight from the 1951 Colgate skit, From Here to Maternity. Even TikTok duos rack up millions by recreating Dean's deadpan brow lift while a partner pratfalls beside him. Queer theorists argue the duo's subversive bed sharing primed America to accept bromance tropes that later smuggled genuine queer narratives into mainstream. Screenwriter Dustin Lance Black credits Sailor Beware for giving him permission to write vulnerable masculinity into Milk. Meanwhile, YouTube commentators compile supercuts titled "Martin and Lewis Invented Queer Coding, Fight Me," racking up 500,000 likes overnight. Their influence isn't a dusty relic, it's code stitched into modern storytelling, pinging every time a hero tells his sarcastic partner, "I love you, man," without a trace of irony. Fast forward to 2025, civil service workers again whisper of loyalty tests as anti-DEI orders swirl through Congress. Rainbow flags disappear from cubicles overnight. Veteran activists haul vintage Lavender Scare picket signs out of archives, warning colleagues the past is prologue. One DC staffer tells Teen Vogue, "We're deleting contacts the way my grandfather burned letters." On social media, clips of Martin and Lewis kissing resurface with hashtags #HumorousShield and #HistoryRepeats. At June's LA Pride Parade, the Grand Marshals rolled a 50-foot mobile LED screen, looping the 1950 nightclub smooch in slow motion. Every time Dean's hat tips and Jerry's eyes widen, the street erupts. Sax players riff, "That's Amore," over a trap beat. An elder with a Stonewall 1969 button wipes tears, telling a reporter, "Those two showed affection before I knew I could." The line goes viral, proving the resonance of a gag that once skirted censorship but now shouts liberation. In 1950, Senator Clyde Hoey chaired televised hearings where psychiatrists testified that effeminate mannerisms were enough to brand a man disloyal. The Washington Post ran daily headlines, and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover quietly poured funds into entrapment operations. One sting operation in Lafayette Park netted 75 arrests in a single weekend, and the local paper crowed, "Pervert ring shattered." Frank Kameny later recalled standing in front of the Commerce Building, reading that article, and deciding, "I will never bow my head again." That spark of resistance would bloom into the picket lines of 1965, but in the early 50s, very few people dared answer terror with defiance, except two comedians hiding their protest inside pratfalls. Fast forward to Artists and Models, 1955. The plot revolved around comic book obsessions, but the real fireworks came in a dream sequence where Dean lounges shirtless while Jerry, dressed in a ballerina tutu, pirouettes around him whining, "Paint me like one of your French girls, D." Censors slashed 16 seconds of the scene for European releases, yet domestic audiences left theaters quoting it for weeks. Variety praised the picture for marrying kid appeal with sardonic satire, but the Chicago Tribune sniffed, "There is something unwholesome in the subtext." Unwholesome sold tickets. Rumors didn't stay on page 6. One night in 1954, Hedda Hopper confronted Jerry at Macambo, demanding to know, "Do you boys share more than punchlines?" Jerry fired back, "Only income tax," then poured champagne into her hat. The stunt made front pages coast to coast, eclipsing a Senate vote on anti-communist funding the same day. Publicly, Dean laughed it off. Privately, he fumed that the escapade threatened his custody battle for his eldest children. The breakup fallout lasted longer than headlines suggested. Studio wardrobe departments found notes in pockets. No more tandem fittings after July, a minor administrative detail that signaled their on-screen chemistry would never be replicated. In 1958, NBC executives costed a reunion special, predicting a 50 share in ratings. Dean rejected the overture with a handwritten, "No amount of zeros buys peace of mind." Jerry, spilling to a confidant, said, "The only voice I miss is the one that called me kid." During the 1976 telethon, cameras cut to Sammy Davis Jr. in the wings wiping tears. Davis later said, "I watched two halves become whole again." Pledges spiked by $3 million in the next hour. Telethon producers later credited The Hug for funding an entire year's research grants. It turned nostalgia into cash, proof that sentiment could move mountains of money. Their storytelling DNA also infects gaming culture. Fans of the blockbuster Uncharted series note that Nathan Drake's Snark and Brawn pairing with Sully echoes Martin and Lewis. Developers at Naughty Dog even admitted screening the caddy for voice actors to nail the cadence of loving mockery. On the indie scene, 2023 hit Goodbye Volcano High includes a locker room poster of Martin and Lewis winking under the caption, "Comedy is trust." Today's echoes feel urgent. In early 2025, Tennessee banned public drag events within 1,000 feet of schools, citing child protection. Protesters responded by staging silent readings of Dean and Jerry scripts on courthouse steps, culminating each recitation with the infamous stage kiss. Police hesitated. No ordinance covered vintage movie dialogue. The image trended under #Codebreaker Challenge, reminding legislators that censorship often chokes on creativity. One overlooked tributary of their influence shows up in K-pop fandoms. When Korean variety show hosts pair an ultra-serious idol with an over-caffeinated bandmate, social media tags the combo a M and L couple, shorthand for affectionate teasing that skirts official romance while feeding shipping culture. A 2024 Seoul National University media study logged 2.3 million tweets referencing Martin and Lewis during the release week of BTS member Jungkook's solo single, a 70-year echo racing across languages. Academic circles keep digging. Georgetown's 2025 symposium Queer Coding Before Stonewall devoted an entire panel to the duo, arguing that their 1950s physicality prepared mainstream viewers to accept later open depictions like Will and Grace and Schitt's Creek. Panelist Dr. Elena Rodriguez summarized, "They normalized male vulnerability by disguising it as slapstick. Once audiences laughed, fear melted." At the same conference, a graduate student unveiled statistical analysis of laugh rhythms from Colgate kinescopes, showing spikes whenever Dean touched Jerry, evidence that closeness produced measurable delight even under censorship. The finding went viral among data-minded TikTok creators who began overlaying pulse charts on classic clips, proving comedy can be quantified and queerness can, quite literally, register waves. Looking forward, Disney Plus greenlit a biopic miniseries slated for 2027, positioning the duo as rock stars with microphones instead of guitars. Early script leaks suggest the show will open not with the famous stage kiss, but with two exhausted men in a ragged dressing room asking almost shyly, "Mind if I sit next to you?" That choice underlines the legacy's core lesson. Intimacy begins quietly, then snowballs into legend once an audience catches the spark. Whether the production leans romantic or strictly platonic, the debate itself keeps their iconography alive and keeps viewers coming back for more. Dean Martin famously mused, I'd hate to be a teetotaler. Imagine waking up knowing that's as good as you'll feel all day. Jerry Lewis countered, comedy is a man in trouble, and if he's lucky, trouble teaches him the truth. Their partnership bottled the thrill of daring to hold a gaze 1 second longer than polite society allowed. It didn't topple Eisenhower's edict, but it cracked the veneer, reminding terrified citizens that laughter and tenderness can share a stage. So, here's my challenge to you. The next time fear mongers police who you can hug or how you can laugh, remember 2 entertainers who risked their careers for a punchline and won. Drop your thoughts downstairs in the comments, hit like if that kiss still shocks, and subscribe for next week's deep dive into another legend who bent the rules until they snapped. Stay curious, stay bold, and never be afraid to share the stage with someone who sees the world upside down. It might just flip history right side up.